The keywords that we are addressing today range from social media, metaverse, and privacy, open data, data sharing, and all the other keywords that are related to digital and IT technologies. I understand that you still have some questions that are not addressed because we handle so many different in-depth topics today. Please understand that this forum is about understanding the general IT trends in the post-COVID era, and we wanted to handle the different topics so that they would be relevant to a lot of the audience that are joining us online. And now I think session 4 brings to you a topic which would be relevant for everyone, and that is future talents. In the rapidly changing global environment, we have to explore ways to foster future talents and reform education, which is a prerequisite to boosting national competitiveness in the era of digital economy. We have a moderator and 3 panelists. Let me introduce them to you. As a moderator, we have Executive Director Choi Sung-jin of Korea Startup Forum, the organizer of today's forum. Our first panelist is Mr. Park Jae-sung, the Woowa Tech Course Director of Woowa Bros. And we also have Adjunct Professor at SNU Graduate School of International Studies, Choi Ji-eun. And we have Global HR Lead at Sandbird Korea, Mr. Hong Ki-nam. I thank the audience for leaving your answers in the chat room on YouTube. After we will receive the answers to the questions up till now, and now we will begin session 4. If you have any questions during the session, please leave them in the chat on YouTube. Let's begin session 4.
네, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the session 4 of Digital Economy Forum 2021. My name is Choi Sung-jin, the moderator of session 4. So the forum provided us with a great opportunity to ponder on very interesting topics, and session 4 will also present you with very interesting ideas, so please stay with us until the end of the forum. So we have with us prominent speakers. We talked about metaverse today, and also about big data and my data. So we covered very important topics, and the next big things beyond the pandemic is the theme of Digital Economy Forum 2021. So of course, this is not just about objects. It's about how we need to foster and nurture our future talents as well. So the change brought about by the transformation, it was not just driven by the pandemic, but anyways, we will see a shifting point anytime soon. And we would like to hear more about how we can nurture talent with 3 speakers. So instead of me introducing the speakers, I would like to ask the speakers to briefly introduce themselves and please tell us what you do. So first of all, next to me, we have Mr. Park. Can you please tell us about what you do and what you have in mind as future talents and their qualifications? First of all, we have with us Director Park Jae-sung from Woowa Brothers. Can you please introduce yourself?
반갑습니다.
Good afternoon. I am a director of Woowa Tech Course at Woowa Bros. It's a 10-month-long training program for the employees. And also I work at Next Step, where I provide training for the employees. Nice to meet you.
네, 너무 짧게 말씀해 주셔서 제가 물을 마시려다가
Well, that was brief. I was about to drink a sip of water, but anyways, now let's move on to the next panelist, Mr. Hong from Sandbird Korea. It's a global company. You are the head of the global head of people operations. So can you please say hi?
Good afternoon. I am currently Global People Operation Head at Zenbird Korea. I am Ki Nam-hong. Zenbird is the world's biggest chatting API company. In April, we became Korea's very first B2B chatting API solution company. And I have also worked in HR departments in O-House and other Korean companies. In the rapidly changing environment of Korea, I am focused on nurturing the talents and human resources.
국제대학원
Last but not least, Professor Choi Ji-eun, who is a visiting professor at SNU. And well, I hear that you have extensive experience with training talents. So can you please introduce yourself? Yes, hello. As introduced, I'm now visiting professor at SNU, but before that, I was actually a representative for the global affairs at 더불어 Democratic Party. And before that, I also served as senior economist at a global agencies such as World Bank and ADB. So digital economy and future jobs is one of the topics that I'm very much interested in. And I look at how AI impacts those topics, not only in Korea, but also in developing countries. So I co-authored books and research those topics. Yes, thank you very much for that introduction. So with that, I would like to jump into conclusion because I love doing that. So now, what about the future capabilities that we need to acquire? How can we survive the age of the pandemic? What qualifications are required from the young people and the talents? So let's talk about that. Of course, we highlighted the importance of talents even in the past, but now, it's never too much to stress the importance of talents. If you look at Apple, whenever they acquire other companies, then they will evaluate each talent at about 3 billion won in the takeover process. And actually, well, buying startups is not buying the company, but buying the talent pool. So we now live in an age of talent war. So let's talk about what we can do to nurture more talent. So now let's go backwards, and I would like to ask Professor Che to talk about that topic first. Well, I would like to mention three things. First, flexibility. Now, well, we cannot say for sure what sector will be promising. We need to talk about what skill sets are required, what technologies are required, competencies are required. So first, we need flexibility. Second, we need creativity from the talent. So it's not about staying inside the box. It's about thinking outside the box and really being innovative. And number three, it's about being global. So I think the boundaries between countries have been blurred. So I actually watched a foreign drama yesterday on Netflix, and actually global viewers can easily access Korean dramas and data. So this is a data economy and digital economy. We no longer have borders between countries. So we have to go global. We have to target the entire world. So it's not just about the norms in Korea, but about global norms and the norms that we need to follow on the global stage. So talents need to have such skills as well. Next, Mr. Hong.
From my point of view, as a startup, the talents that we're looking for can be described as follows. First of all, as startups competing against large conglomerates, in order to secure competitive advantage, we need certain capabilities in our talents. As you must be familiar with, some of the capabilities we're looking for in startups is flexibility in thinking, so flexible thinking. And also, we want people to demonstrate good teamwork, good collaboration with others. And we want people to start solving problems and defining problems without getting instructions from the boss necessarily. And I think fast execution speed defines the competitiveness of startups, and that's what we're looking for in our human resources as well. Also, in this era of COVID, another important capability that we're looking for is we want our employees to be internally motivated. Before COVID, you come to the office and you work with your colleagues, you feel a sense of belonging with your colleagues, and all of that was created naturally. However, with COVID, a lot of people are working from home, and therefore it's become more important for the employees to have an internal motivation.
재택근무
Yes, because we work from home. Yes, I feel you what you said. Now, Mr. Park, what's your take on this question?
그
So, as someone who is working in an educational institute and an education and training program, I would like to talk about the talents that UA Bros is looking for. So, Mr. Hong talked about what he is looking for as a startup. So, what we're looking for as well is we want people who are actually ready to start working immediately on the site. And also, of course, collaboration and teamwork is very important. So that would be the second quality that we're looking for. And that is actually a priority quality that we hope to nurture in our training curriculum. And the third quality is we want people who can actually teach themselves. I think that's also related with internal motivation. Instead of passive learners, we want kind of self-led learners. We want people who have autonomous and internal motivation. And I think that's especially important in the software or digital industry because the landscape is changing so quickly. You have to continue studying and learning new things. And in that respect, you need to really lead your own learning. So when I communicate with the students, I want to talk about if they're having fun learning things, and I want them to have fun in our training courses.
어,
Yes, thank you very much. So I think you talked about very similar points, but also you also talked about some different points. For instance, flexibility and creativity. That's what Professor Che said. I think all three talked about flexibility and collaboration, as well as autonomy and self-leading capabilities and self-execution. So yes, different qualities required from talents. So that's in principle, of course, we have always wanted such talent. So if I were to add up on that, well, what about the talent qualities in the post-pandemic age? What would be the one distinct difference between the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic quality? Yes, Mr. Park?
혁명 뭐 지금 4차
We came through the fourth industrial revolution. In the past, it was about unilaterally acquiring and absorbing existing knowledge and applying that on work. That was all was required in workers. I'm sorry, but I'm a little nervous. So could you repeat the question, please? Actually, you are answering my question. My question is, what's the difference in the qualities of talents between the past and the digital era? Oh yes, thank you. When I was a student, we were all in a competition. I had to study on my own. Everybody else was studying on their own. But now, we have to learn through teamwork and collaboration. I think that's a new priority in the digital era. Also, in the past, at the time, there were so many challenges that we had to address. And even now, we do have a lot of challenges. But I think right now we have enough tools to solve the challenges. Right now, it's more about defining the challenges. We have to define and identify the challenges in order to solve them properly. And I think that is what you would describe as a leadership quality. What I mean is you have to actually take the initiative to identify new challenges to solve. And I think that's a quality that's becoming more important.
아니면 아니
Anything that you would like to add, or if you disagree, please feel free to disagree. Mr. Hong?
I would like to build on my previous answer. After COVID, as I said, internal motivation has become more important. And especially in startups where you don't have clear hierarchical structure in the organization, you don't have clearly defined tasks, you have to identify your own tasks. You have to identify the problems that you want to solve in the organization. And this has always been an important quality, but it's becoming much more important today. And especially because we're not physically in the same office. I don't know if I should use the term supervisor, but anyway, in the absence of a so-called supervisor or someone who gives you instructions, you have to take the initiative to understand the mission of your organization and how your work contributes to the mission of the organization. And that will give you a personally rewarding experience, and I think that could provide you with a sense of internal motivation. And I think since COVID, this has become much more important in people's work experience.
Yes. What about you, Professor Che? Yes, so you talked about post-pandemic talent quality. Well, now since everything has moved online and everything is remotely done, I think that the talents have to adapt to the new environment. And also in terms of diversification of occupation. So it's not just about full-time staff, but a lot of people are moving freelance or contract. So we are seeing more different types of employment, but that led to fiercer competition. So the talents will need to adapt and adjust to the new norms and make sure that they're flexible when transitioning from one job to another, and we also need to support such talents in that process. Yes, thank you very much for that. So you talked about very important points, and one common quality that you mentioned, I think, after the pandemic, in the age of post-pandemic and digital economy, we cannot predict the future. It's impossible. So the talents will need to navigate through the uncertainties. And that will be one very critical, essential quality required from the talents. So for the past 20 years, let's say, well, you need to what happened before was to acquire knowledge over 20 years, and then for the remaining 20 years, the rest of the years, the older generations used up the knowledge. However, that's no longer the case. So now we cannot predict the future. We cannot predict what changes will be brought about by the future. So the talents will need to interpret the situations with their own capabilities and be flexible and creative in addressing the challenges. So I think you talked about that. Then how are we going to nurture such talent? So we will talk about that, but I will park that for now. So one thing that I would like to mention first, now when we talk about the digital economy, we talk a lot about software developers and computer scientists and experts with computing skills. And we also talk about the lack of human talent pools that we have. So we say that Korea actually have For at least 350,000 talents is expected to be created over the next 5 years, but that will result in a shortage of more than 30,000 people. So anyways, now, of course, software developers will not be the one and only job for the digital economy, but it will be essential. So, anyways, software developers will be an essential workforce. So, how important are they in the workforce? Because we have so many different programs that educate students on different majors and not just a software development. So how are we going to train those talents? So Mr. Park, from your experience, what's your take on this?
우아한 테
The background for the introduction of what tech course is actually related to that. In 2008 or 2019, we experienced a severe lack in software developers. We could actually feel it in our everyday work. And Walbros wanted to hire a lot of the developers, but there was a limit to the pool that was available to us. And we basically knew everybody in the pool. And so we wanted to expand the pool, and that's why I introduced What Tech Course. And then COVID broke out, and this phenomenon of lack of talent pool is actually accelerating. This year, as far as I know, a lot of companies have offered a raise, offered a higher salary, and is offering remote work as an option to hire developers, but still a lot of the companies are struggling to develop developers. For example, this popular company called Nicaragua, it is also struggling to hire developers. In Korea, a lot of the startups have grown to be bigger, and these medium-sized companies are also struggling to hire developers. So that's the situation we have right now. Meanwhile, conventional industries like finance, manufacturing, they also have to make a digital transformation, and they also want to hire developers. And manufacturing industry or other conventional industries actually wanted different qualities in human resources compared to IT companies like Nicaragua. But now, IT companies and manufacturing companies are looking for the same quality in human resources. However, considering the educational environment of Korea, for example, we don't have enough people with these qualities. So our concern is that it will become more and more difficult for the small companies and startups to actually recruit the talent.
테크 코스
Yes, so well, Ua Brothers Tech Force is actually leading the efforts to train those human resources, but we still have a long way to go. And Sandberg, Bird, you also have a global business, so you can maybe give us some input from not only Korea's perspective, but also global perspective. You have a business not only in Korea, but also in the US. So how about the US? Is it better or worse off?
생각에 지금
I think this lack of talent pool is something that's experienced across the globe, not just in Korea. The two keywords that were the focus of today's forum was, first of all, everything is turning digital, and therefore we require more human resources with digital capacity, and we do not have enough supply that meets the demand. Also, because of the COVID situation, we are slowly shifting toward, or rather rapidly shifting toward a contactless world, and therefore, across the world, we see this lack of talent pool. So this may not be exactly an answer to your question, but developers and other tech specialists, of course, have to be nurtured. That's very important. We have to have enough supply to meet the demand, because at the moment we have an imbalance between supply and demand. But from the company's point of view, in the thinking about the post-COVID era, we also see changes in the demands by the employees as well as the applicants. In the past, when we have a negotiation with the employees, we talk about, for example, a leave system or a salary or other welfares. But after COVID, their demands have become so much more diversified. They are also interested if the company provides systematic training, if the company supports their career development. And sometimes the applicants even ask the interviewers about the values or the philosophy of the company. So that sometimes leads to turnovers of employees, and that is also, I think, one contributing factor to the struggle of companies to retain the talents. And therefore, the companies have to actually develop their own convincing value proposition for the employees and promote the value proposition to the employees. And I think that could help the companies retain the talent.
답변이 제가
Yes. So that was actually my next question, but then you already gave me an answer. So this is a follow-up question to what you just said. So Sandbird wants to operate its business with a large pool of global talents. So, what value do you offer to the talents?
일단
Yes. In the case of Sandbird, basically, in terms of financial compensation or employee perks and compensation, that's just a default. In addition to that, the differentiated value proposition of Sandbird is, first of all, that we are a global company. We are currently headquartered in the Silicon Valley in the States. And instead of simply replicating the Silicon Valley culture, we have created a fusion of the Korean working culture and the Silicon Valley culture to strike that optimum balance in the working culture. And that could be a valuable proposition for our employees. And Sandbird is currently specialized in the vertical of chatting API. In this particular vertical, we are one of the leading companies in the world. And being a leading company in the vertical also could be a value proposition for the employees, because you could continue to develop the market leadership position of the company by working with us. Also, we provide stock options. This year, we have actually upgraded our stock option program to the level equivalent to Silicon Valley. So we offer a very attractive stock option benefit.
그럼 스톡 옵션을
So, have you also received stock option? Okay. So you talked about the values that Sandbird provides, and you talked about how you want to share the benefits of the company with all the employees. Now moving on to you, Professor Choi, we talked about the software developers, and that led us to talk about Sandbird. But anyways, we talk about the lack of software developers. We like about 350,000 developers. That's what the statistics say, at least. But anyways, we need to address that shortage of workforce. And since you have experience working at international agencies, so are we panicking too much, or how do you see this? So, from your perspective, are we ready? Well, I guess countries differ in their need for software developers. But if you look at Korea, we have to look at what skills we need to teach the students. Well, COVID-19 has hit hard Korea's economy, and of course that has led to the government to invest in Digital New Deal and Green New Deal to bolster our economy. And that was a bold initiative that was laid out by the Korean government last year under Korea 2.0 initiative, and Human New Deal was also part of the pillars. And software talents and developing such talents was a key part of that. So under 2.0, we have 41 universities for now that train software developers. We want to increase that to 60 or more, and also to provide more training programs. And at the same time, the government plans to not only support the job seekers, but also to make sure that those out of the workforce can return to the workforce, and AI and software human resources will be added by 89,000. But despite the plan, well, will we be able to inject the talents right away to the workforce? Will they be ready to work right on the spot? Well, we see the development of new programs and services. They are being developed as we speak, and the government is always one step behind. And you also talked about the shortage of staff. And I think that Korea faces a huge task in that sense. Yes, well, since I'm at Korea Startup Forum, I hear so much from the CEOs about, that they want to hire good software developers. They tell me, complain that Nekara Kube companies, they steal all the top talents from them. Anyways, but it's not so much about the numbers. So, of course, we will need 350,000 software developers, but it's not just the numbers that we need to focus on, but the quality of the services that we provide, the education that we provide to those people. So now we are faced with multiple tasks. So I think now the trends have changed because those who were trained before, are no longer skilled in this age. So we have this new terminology, K training, as well. But anyways, well, Mr. Park, you worked in NH Next, and you also were involved in creating an ecosystem. So I would like to hear more about that. What's your goal at UA Brothers? So after completing your course, you don't just aim at hiring those people at UA Brothers, but you want to train those people so that they can be hired in other companies as well. And so you have a very broad objective, I suppose. So how is your training program different from the existing programs?
네,
Yes. As I said earlier, in WUA Tech course, we want to solve the problem of limited human resource pool in the tech industry. That is the purpose of this program. It's been about 9 years since I've been providing education. When I first began education, I really didn't like this kind of a unilateral knowledge transfer programs, and I wanted to innovate ways to educate people. And I started thinking about a different alternative role of an instructor. And I came to this thought that instead of teaching students or instructing the students, I wanted to create an environment where the students can have a meaningful experience so that they can learn under their own initiative. And when they run into any obstacles or barriers, then we intervene as coaches or mentors. That was the idea that I had. And NHN Next which is where I worked for a couple of years, I tried this idea, and in WUA Tech course as well, I am applying this concept in the design of the course. So our purpose is not to deliver knowledge. Our purpose is to design missions. And under the missions, we want them to have meaningful experiences. And when they're struggling, we provide them with consultations and mentoring so that they can go to the next step. In order to become software developers, I think the opportunity is open for everyone, but there are so many obstacles that you could overcome on the way, and that makes a lot of people give up on their way. We don't want them to give up. We want them to continue pursuing this path toward a software developer. So what we do is we provide small step-by-step missions that the students can follow on their journey, and also we want to make the mission more relevant to what happens on the site. What we do is their missions can be reviewed by the on-site reviewers, who are basically the professionals working in the field, and that provides a more fun and immersive learning experience for the students. And I'm not saying that this is the only right answer, but I think we really need these diverse experiments. I mean, I've never been educated this way, so it took me a lot of courage to actually try this new design for educational courses. Anyhow, I think there should be an environment where you can try a lot of experiments in terms of education and training as well. Most of the applicants who want to join our course is mostly college students or those who freshly graduated from college. But what we want to actually expand our audience. We want to also educate high school students, because they also have a potential to grow into software engineers. Also, another contributing factor to the lack of talent pool is when you become a grown up, your education only focuses on the job training. However, other qualities like teamwork and leadership has to be fostered from an early age, for example, from elementary school. It cannot be taught within a short period of time once you become grown up. And therefore, I believe that primary and secondary education also have to transfer in this direction.
그러니까 아까
Yes, thank you very much for that. So you keep emphasizing on identifying the problems, and the problem-solving skills will be important for the software developers as well as other talents. And also, we talk a lot about entrepreneurship, especially at the startup level. So it's not about managing a business. Entrepreneurship extends beyond that concept. So it's about writing codes for the computer to understand the values of entrepreneurship. And well, as we keep talking about this topic, well, the K12 education as well as the university in Korea, are not enough to train such skills to the students. Then, what do you think, Mr. Hong, about this criticism? Because now the university, I think, is the bedrock of all these problems. Then what causes these challenges? What are the problems that we need to do? Professor Che? Yes. Well, I think the Korea's educational system has improved quite much, but we still have a long way to go, because you study from elementary school to high school to enter a good prestigious university, and once you get into a university, you study to get a job. But then they have to become resilient. So you can fail, but that's okay. It's okay to fail, and we need to teach students that kind of mindset. And we have some students who actually want to learn that. And because I was overseas first for a few years, and then I came back to Korea, and the students that I see these days have changed from the students of the past. They are more rational. They have good writing skills, and I think they are much better than me in terms of such skill sets. And well, I was not a STEM major, so I was more about literature. But anyways, I see many schools, trying out different ideas. So, for instance, the schools can support students really unleash their imagination and creativity. And I actually hear that there are actual cases of schools that help students do that. And sometimes, of course, we have some global cases that we should import, and some local cases that we can export to other countries if such cases are successful. So, the schools in Korea and companies in Korea should collaborate and work together with those in other countries, not just in Silicon Valley in the States, but in India and Africa, so that we can really borrow from each other's ideas. And I hope that our educational system can become more flexible. Yes, thank you very much for that. So, as we covered many different topics. We don't have much time left. We talked about the future talents, and what you are doing at your respective positions to train talents. Of course, we cannot draw a conclusion now, but we should talk about any programs that can train the talents, alternative programs other than the public school system. And one of the most interesting cases that I heard recently was that the Minister of Education in Indonesia used to serve as a head in Gojek. So we will have to see whether he is successful or not. But I think that we will see many innovative ideas from the ministry. And well, before we had online school such as Minerva School, and we also had Hyper Island, which was not a software type, but based on your experience, well, could you please tell us about any alternative programs that we can adopt or implement? Well, not just in Korea, but also in other countries, so that we can train more future talents. So, if you can share your insights, I think it will be very helpful to the audience. Mr. Hong?
Yes, nurturing talents requires government policies and business activities, and also efforts by the educational institutions. But from the business point of view, actually, I'm quite impressed by Tech course that Mr. Park talked about, because he said that it's not just about delivering specialized knowledge, which is the conventional method of education, but also it follows the latest trends in fostering human resources, which is it's not just about fostering expertise or knowledge, but it's also about fostering creativity and teamwork, and also interpersonal relationship skills, people skills. I think that's the trend. And from the business point of view, these qualities are becoming more important for us. For instance, at Sendbird, we have a strong focus on leadership training. And what we're looking for is we are basically looking to provide personalized leadership coaching for all the leaders, all the executives, and they can actually become coaches and mentors for their own teams, their own departments. We basically want to create this cycle, virtuous cycle of learning and development across the organization. So instead of just delivering knowledge, we are more focused on creativity, and I think that is the right direction going forward. And I think this would also be incorporated by educational institutions as well. I think, I mean, I don't have any expertise in Korea's educational facilities or educational institutions, but I would definitely like them to focus more on nurturing creative human resources and global human resources. So yeah, I would love to see these qualities being fostered in educational institutions as well. Also, entrepreneurship is a quality that should be incorporated in the curricula of the schools, and that would be very helpful for us, the businesses.
박재성
Yes, thank you very much. What about you, Mr. Park? Well, if you didn't have any limitations to your resources, if you could do anything, anything's possible, what would you like to create?
일단
Yes, Wuwa Tech Core started small, and we actually received government support under the title of K12 Training Program, and it gave us quite a lot of freedom to design our own curriculum. So we were able to be brave enough to expand our program every year because we actually received support not just from the business but also from the government that gave us the courage, and also that actually led to a lot of applicants who wanted to instruct in our course. And our wish is that the government tends to focus too much on the numbers, the quantity, but I would also like the government to focus more on the qualitative aspect of human resources. So many money is being spent to nurture developers, but the businesses have been saying for more than 20 years that it's so difficult to recruit the developers. So what does that mean? It means that we have to change our direction. We have to change the way we do things. When I talk with the students, I can see so much potential in them. I can see how outstanding they are as human resources. You know how a lot of older people say that they are worried about the younger generations? No need to be worried at all. They are human resources with great potential that has to be that only has to be unleashed in the right environment, and we have to basically create a right environment for them. And usually, government support also entailed a lot of interventions and administrative procedures, but I hope that the government will provide support with less interventions. I mean, of course, they could impose penalties if if the program is illegal, for example, or uses unjust methods. However, as long as the instructor and the students have the right commitment, they don't need any intervention from the government. All they need is the support from the government. Whether it's the governments or educational institutions, all of these entities should now translate their words into action.
말씀을
Yes, thank you very much for that. I think that was a very important point that you mentioned. So it shouldn't be a cookie cutter approach. So we cannot just inject information to the brains of the students. It has to be interactive. And what Mr. Park said, well, the private sector, the businesses can voluntarily carry out such projects, and that can actually be expanded to other sectors as well. So until recently, actually, if you look at Innovation Academy, well, we said that we need more high quality talents, and the government spent 35 billion Korean won to train such talent, but it did not turn to be effective. So now what we need to do is maybe the private sector can take the first steps, and before it was like, if there are any problems, then the government will address it, but we need to take on a different perspective. Now, in terms of this system, not just the software developers, what can we do going forward? Well, startup, we need to support startups, and we also need to train software developers, but I think that the government should not meddle with what the private sector does. So of course, the government needs to provide support to the private sector, but if you look at the manufacturing sector, with the conglomerates, well, the semiconductor business was the flagship sector in the manufacturing industry, and the government actually focused on that. It was the top priority. But if the government takes charge in devising the plan for the industry, then it will be too slow. So we need to take a different approach. What the government can do is to establish the institutions. At the same time, we also need to deal with polarization. So now we have AI automation, and what happens is that, of course, the rich is getting richer with the data, and the poor is getting poorer. And because of the data automation, now the youth are unemployed. And the fourth industrial revolution actually made that trend even worse. And my research shows that in developing countries, we see an opposing trend. That's because the poorest population, they don't have nearby banks. So what they do, well, they can rely on their mobile phones to make transactions, to send money, and the farmers can actually check information to travel to a different marketplace to get a better price for their goods. So it's about how you use the technology so that we can address the problem of unemployment, youth unemployment, as well as polarization. But it's the role of the government to really embrace the different population and make sure that no one is marginalized. And of course, inclusiveness is important, but of course, having young people joining tech firms is, of course, a positive aspect. But the government can also help the senior population use data better, and sometimes it can also help those who experienced break out from the job market to rejoin the job market. Yes, so thank you very much for that. So time's almost up, so we have to wrap up. Anyways, we have many people who have sent us their feedback and questions. But anyways, I think that we have entertained most of their feedback and opinions. Well, I wanted to give you some more time to make a final comment, but you actually covered almost all the topics that the audience wanted to hear. So we will leave it there. Anyways, what will these future talents do in the future? They need to identify problems and solve the problems. So, of course, we need to not only pay attention to the talents and the qualities of their talents, but we need to also look at the problems that arise from such trends, such as polarization. And that's, you know, our job. Of course, we need to identify the right workforce and the talents, but we should not just focus on the top performers, but make it more inclusive. So I hope that we can actually practice what you said in our everyday life and in our everyday business operation. And I hope that next year, after you have practiced for 1 year, we can revisit whether we have been successful or not next year. So thank you very much for your time. With that, we will wrap up session 4.
Thank you. So the panelists leave with this homework. Now, this Digital Economy Forum began at 10 a.m. this morning, and that was the last session of today's forum. I would like to extend my gratitude to all the speakers, the panelists, as well as the audience who are staying with us. After this forum, we will announce the winners of the quiz event and also pre-registration event winners. So please stay with us until the very end. And we have concluded our last session today, and it is now time to conclude the 4th Digital Economy Forum. As we've discussed in session 4, nurturing human resources has become a must in the era of digital economy. I look forward to a lot of experiments and future endeavors in this respect, and I hope that today's forum was a meaningful opportunity for you to get insight as well as broader perspective on the digital economy. And we are committed to continuing organizing forums for discussions and explorations for the future of the digital economy. I look forward to your continuous support in our next year's Digital Economy Forum as well. With that, I conclude the 4th Digital Economy Forum, hosted by the Ministry of Economy and Finance and hosted by the Korea Startup Forum.
감사합니다.